Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Rainey Toon Talk. And join us today, we have SkySports presenter Tom White. Tom, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it feels quite strange because I've just seen we've been playing football in the garden with my son, but before that, we're having our dinner. It was quite watching you on the television. Now we've been chatting with you kind of half an hour later. It's quite a surreal moment.
Yeah,
Your son didn't believe it at first.
It's hard for us at the moment because we have to have the somber attire on. We have to you can't really have any kind of laughing and joking at the moment. And normally a Sunday would be action packed with games on. Now we actually call it Soccer Sunday, like a smaller version of Soccer Saturday. So kind of focus, 90%, 95% on football. And today's been completely different. So it's a really different, really weird mood at the moment, but understandable.
Yeah, doing a cracking job. Like I say, I've watched a few hours today, and it's doing really good. Like I say, under the circumstances for the Queen as well, really good. But a lot of questions coming in from the Facebook group and on our Twitter and from ourselves as well. Just starting with yourself, how did your love come around for sport journalism, and how did the role land with Sky Sports?
Yeah, very. The moment I wanted to get into this kind of thing was the first game for England in the 1990 World Cup, which was the first match I watched live. I mean, from home, not at the game. And watching the game, and I said to my dad, "Who's that man talking?" Right, meaning the commentator. So I wanted to be, from that moment, I always wanted to be a commentator, and I have done commentary. But once I got to Sky, I realised that commentary was something I could maybe do later in my career, and I quite fancied going down the reporter and presenter side of things. So when I got to Sky, which was just work experience when I was still at university, still had a year left at university, did 2 weeks work experience, and at the end of it, managed to get some shifts as a runner. And a runner in this industry makes tea and coffee. You're at the very, very bottom of the ladder. You have to look after the guests. You have to do the auto cue for the presenters. But a lot of the time, you are actually making tea and coffee and doing food orders for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's how I started. And from there, decided that I wanted to push on towards reporter and hopefully presenter. And I managed to do that. It took me about 5 years to start reporting, and took me 7 years, almost to the day, from first shift as a runner to first shift as a presenter.
Wow, so yeah, it's really, really good. Like you say, experience just building up, isn't it? It's really good. I think a lot of questions that I've been asked as many times as possible is transfer deadline day. Just how chaotic is it in that studio on that day?
It is chaotic, but in a good way, right? What we want is, in my job, what you want is big stories constantly. There's nothing worse than a day where people talk about a slow news day. And when it's a slow news day, you actually got to really work so much harder, because you've got to find stories. You've got to, like filling a rundown is quite difficult when there isn't that much going on. Deadline day, it's like, okay, you might have a very rough structure in place, but we're led by the amount of stories that happen, and so many transfers going through. And a transfer breaking down is just as big a story as a transfer going through. And on deadline day, no matter how many times anyone says it, clubs should have their business done well before transfer deadline day, but they don't. They don't. They hold out because they think they can get a better deal, whether that's a selling club or the buying club. They think holding out till deadline day will get them maximum value for money one way or the other. So it's great. It's great fun to be doing it, but also it's easy in the sense that the stories just come to you.
Yeah.
It's harder in the sense that if there's a transfer going on about a player transfer, you need to, and that comes into your breaking news. That's what really tests your knowledge. You've got to know everything about that player and off the top of your head, because there's no time to do any research on that player. And that's where I particularly love it, because my knowledge of football is, I know how good it is. My knowledge is, I'd back myself against anyone in this industry for my knowledge of football, various players, various clubs and such like, just purely because I watch so much and I love it so much. So you put all of that together, and deadline day ends up being a perfect day.
No, it's really good watching it as a Newcastle fan now, actually being involved with transfers again. Because I know how quiet it's been over the last God knows how many years. So it's quite exciting. I know not too much business on the deadline, but the transfer window itself really good. Another question that a lot of people has asked as well is being involved in that transfer deadline day. What's the oddest transfer that kind of has happened or hasn't happened? Would you say that you've kind of reported on that day?
I remember when before I was a presenter, so I was on a production team, and it involves Newcastle. Newcastle were desperate for a striker. Who would have been manager? It could have still been Souness. Who was after Souness? Roda.
Yeah, Souness, Roda. Yeah, for a little bit, yeah.
It could have been Roda. Souness or Roda anyway, I would say. Actually, who was after Roda? It could have been... Anyway, there was... Newcastle were desperate for a striker. The fans were furious that they hadn't signed a striker. They were working so hard to sign a striker, and a big name as well. And the presenter at the time was Ed Chamberlain. And news had got through that Newcastle had signed a striker.
Nice.
And so he's about to break this news. And the production team, we all know what's happening. And he had a little smile on his face because he knew the reaction the Newcastle fans would give. He said, right, Newcastle fans, you've been desperate for a striker. Well, the club have delivered. You've got a new signing. It is Antoine Sibierski, right? Which was... It was such an underwhelming signing for the Newcastle fans because they knew that they'd been working hard on signing a big name striker, but in the end they'd signed Antoine Sibierski, who I think was either a free transfer or a loan, and that one kind of came out of nowhere. So in terms of the world of football, people, that's a very forgettable transfer, but I always remember that because it was just, there was kind of little like giggles in the background because everybody knew that was not what Newcastle were wanting at the time.
Yeah, definitely.
So that one sticks out. That one sticks out in my mind. But there have been baffling transfers in the past. Last summer, Cristiano Ronaldo was minutes away from signing for Manchester City, and that blew everyone's mind. Everyone couldn't believe what was happening, and then you're kind of waiting for confirmation, and suddenly Sir Alex Ferguson has stepped in and said, don't you dare do that, son. Come back to Manchester United. So that whole thing was done so quickly. You'd think when Cristiano Ronaldo left Manchester United for Real Madrid, that whole saga lasted over a year. It started in the summer and it kept on going until the following summer when he eventually moved. This one moved so fast. It was like, Ronaldo to Manchester City, unlikely, but they are trying. Oh my word, they're about to sign Cristiano Ronaldo. And then, can you believe it? Manchester United have come in last minute and got him.
Oh, it was unbelievable watching it as a fan as well. Like you say, it was just one transfer just changes so much on that day. It's unbelievable how much it can, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And that happens quite a lot. In this summer, I was very much involved with the Frankie de Jong to Manchester United line.
Yes. Yeah.
I've been looking after that with my contacts. Sometimes when you see news at the bottom of your screen and you wonder where that's come from, with Frankie de Jong, a lot of that was me.
Right.
And I'd heard ever since Xavi took over at Barcelona, he knew that he had to raise some funds, and Frankie de Jong was the one who would make Barcelona the most money if he was to sell him.
Yeah.
But Xavi kept changing his mind. He was like, no, I don't care. I want him. Actually, no, we need the money. He can go. And that went on for so long that eventually Frankie de Jong didn't really know whether he was coming or going. It was like, right, that's it. They're messing me around. I never wanted to leave in the first place, so I'm staying. So that story goes on and on and on and on. And ultimately, you don't get any further forward because he's still a Barcelona player and Manchester United never got him.
Yeah, it was a really strange one, that one. I mean, a lot of people was asked as well, what's the biggest transfer deal that you've kind of announced while live on the show?
Well, Ronaldo back to Manchester United was definitely one of them. I was on the whole time of when Harry Kane didn't end up going to Manchester City. I was in the whole time. When Harry Kane didn't turn up to training for a few days, that was me every morning. So although that one didn't go through, that was a huge one. Lukaku going back to Chelsea was a huge one. So those ones stand out in terms of transfers. Those ones stand out to me probably because they were quite recent. But whether you are on, if you've had a hand in the transfer, a lot of that is to you. If you're the one who's actually been breaking the story in the scenes, that's something to be very, very proud of. If you're on air when something happens, that's kind of potluck.
Yeah, no, definitely. And a few people's asked as well, obviously with a lot of former pros that come on and do the matches, who's kind of the former pro that you just love work with, who comes on, they have that banter and that has you in stitches every time? Who's the comedian out of a lot of them?
Yeah, well, there's a few. In terms of the guests, I'd have no problem with telling you I didn't like any of them, but I love the guests we have on. I love them. Clinton Morrison's a good friend of mine. We've had a few nights out together as well, which is quite interesting because he doesn't drink and I do. So the night can be quite interesting. But he's one of my favourites. But someone who you'll appreciate is Steve Howie. Love Steve Howie. He's coming. He's having 2 stags. I've already had one. He was on that one, and he's also coming to my proper stag in October as well. So him and Clinton stand out, but also Lee Hendry as well as my kind of favourites, I suppose. You got Sue Smith, who's just probably the nicest person I've ever met, potentially as well. But loads of that. Tell you, I'll talk you back to when I was a runner though. So being quite starstruck by these guests, like getting to meet Niall Quinn was just absolute hero. And they say never meet your heroes. Not when it comes to Niall Quinn. Oh, what a lovely man he is, and people like Kevin Phillips, who've become a friend of mine as well. He was on my first stag do too. But I remember having to make a coffee for Graham Souness, who was at the time Newcastle manager. He was in the studio doing Champions League coverage, covering either Rangers or Liverpool. I'm not sure which. And I came to bring him his coffee, and Richard Keys said to him, "Hey, Suey, be careful. He's a Mackham." Right? He just turned around to me with this like steely look on his face and went, "You have no piss in it, have you?"
Yeah.
But that was quite class. When we had the Champions League rights, we had like big guests there. Like, I mean, Souness obviously is still a big name, but back then being a current Premier League manager was a big name. Walter Smith used to put the fear into me as well, but also as a proper gentleman. And people like Gianluca Vialli, loved Gianluca Vialli, again, proper gentleman. If I was thinking of people who I haven't been so keen on, the one that stands out, and I think you'll probably be quite happy about this, is actually Ruud Gullit. Wasn't very keen on it, actually, and obviously did not go down very well with the Newcastle fans when he was there. But he's kind of the one that stands out who I wasn't as keen on.
Yeah, and obviously your love for football as well in Sunderland. Where did all that come from?
Just family, really. It was when I was a kid. It's you know what it's like when you're from the northeast. As long as your 2 parents support the same club, you support that club. You don't have a choice. They tell you what your name is and they tell you which team you support. That's it. You know, your name's Tom, you support Sunderland. Because my mum and dad both support Sunderland, or both big Sunderland fans still. My dad goes to most of the home games. My mum will go to the big ones. If she stopped going as often as she used to go.
Yeah.
So that was very simple for me. And my sister doesn't really like football, but she knows she's a Sunderland fan because she was told she is. My son is a Sunderland fan because I've told him he is. I'm not with his mum, but his mum doesn't like football, so that was easy as well. That's your name. You support Sunderland, and that's what it's like. When you're from the northeast, it's kind of. I think football is kind of in your blood. I think there's various things in your blood when you're from the northeast. I think hard work is in your blood. All right, because most of our families, most of our ancestors either worked in the mines or shipbuilding.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
So hard work, a real like toughness, but also I think loyalty is I think we are in the northeast in general. I think we are born with all of those qualities. And the other thing is that we have a hereditary love for football, because all of those things come into football: loyalty, hard work, perseverance. They all come in to supporting our football clubs. And so from that first game that I ever watched, that England Republic of Ireland game in 1990, that was, from then on, football was the most important thing in my life, and it's never really changed. Supporting Sunderland and supporting Newcastle, it completely affects your mood. If you win,
it does, yeah, massively.
You are high as a kite until the next game. I love it when Sunderland win and there's an international break.
Yeah.
I love it. I've actually got 2 weeks to enjoy it. I hate the international break, but when Sunderland have won, it's like I'm still celebrating the fact we've won. When we lose, it's just, you can be so down in the dumps, and things that would normally make you very happy, like going on a night out or something, or whatever it may be. There's always something in the back of your mind saying, not enjoying this as much as I should be because Sunderland have lost. And that's what Sunderland and Newcastle fans have in common. We're not the only ones. I think Everton and Liverpool have that as well as some of the clubs lower down the pyramid. Probably Rangers and Celtic too, but that one's a little bit too fierce. It's a little bit personal, that battle between those two. But as Sunderland and Newcastle fans, we know how it is. The result of our clubs affect our mood and can do for a long time. We got promoted via the playoffs in May.
Yeah.
All summer I was happy. Nothing could kill my mood in the summer because we'd got promoted, and that day at Wembley is one that would go down as one of the best days of my life. And
I can bet. Yeah, imagine.
It was nothing for me to be proud of. It's just you end up being so proud of your football team because that's the way we're built in the Northeast.
It is. I mean, you see a lot of roller coasters and things changing. I mean, how surprised and shocked were yourself? Obviously, you win the playoffs, you get promoted, have a great start of the season. Were you kind of shocked when Neil did leave to go to Stoke?
Yeah, and he was amazing for us. When we appointed him, it was like, okay, yeah, all right, he'll do okay, because we all wanted Roy Keane. I think deep down we weren't particularly convinced that would be the right appointment, but it was an exciting appointment.
Yeah.
And when that didn't happen, okay, Alex Neil, and you kind of thought, well, he's got a good record elsewhere. Let's see how he does. And the fact that he got us promoted when we weren't in a great position, we were in a decent position when Lee Johnson was sacked. We weren't in a great position by the time Neil had taken charge because we lost 2 of our most winnable games as we were waiting for Roy Keane. And he was getting us up. He worked real. It wasn't a miracle, of course. Getting someone promoted from League One is not a miracle, but it was what he did was magic. And then gave us a very good start to the Championship as well, when most games this season we will be underdogs because we're a newly promoted side. And he was brilliant. I absolutely loved him. And when I heard that he was Stoke's #1 target, I kind of laughed it off. I didn't even believe it, even though, I've got very good sources and all of my sources were saying that he was going to Stoke. I still didn't believe it.
Yeah,
I actually thought when he was driving down to Stoke, I thought, well, it's just leverage. He's going to go all the way to Stoke. On the way down, he's hoping he'll get a phone call from our owners saying, yeah, okay, we'll pay you what you want. Now, maybe he was, but it does look like actually he had decided to go to Stoke a few days earlier than that. And so I was devastated about it. And I'd really kind of fallen in love with him. Not quite as much as I loved Sam Allardyce. But still, he was getting there in my mind. But when Allardyce left us, he left us for England. Alex Neil left us for Stoke, which is a lot harder to take.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned, like you say there, with the sources that you have as well, and as obviously as a Newcastle fan all over Twitter, if you listen to the in the know accounts that we've had on Twitter this last summer, we could have signed 600 players, a few more than Nottingham Forest have. But as you mentioned there, your sources, how do you kind of get into that? Is it just like friends who hear this, or is it people that's working in the clubs as well?
Yeah, so it's over the years doing this job in terms of getting contacts. It's very, very important to get contacts, and that all comes in time. I'm not suddenly, when I first started as a reporter, my contacts list was very short because I haven't been out and about. You get out and about, you interview people, you get their numbers, and that person may end up at one stage being a really, really good contact. Agents are fairly accessible, but you've got to do your checks. If you get a story from an agent, you might really trust that agent, but you've got to check with both clubs. If it's a transfer story, and an agent says, all right, Dan Burn to Newcastle, maybe the agent is just trying to drum up some interest in Dan Burn. Maybe they're trying to get him a new contract at Brighton. So what you've got to do is say, okay, well, I do trust that agent, but you don't just put the story out. You phone Newcastle, you phone Brighton, and you say, and your contact at the club could be as easy as ringing the press officer. You might have a number from Amanda Staveley, or at the time, I think Dan Ashworth was at Brighton, wasn't he? At the time, you can, you can. Your contacts can be chief executives. It could be the manager. You might have a number for the player. You rarely get anything from the player themselves at the top level. Further down, you can do. So stories can come from players, managers, agents, coaches. I remember I used to get a lot from a physio. To be honest with you, I used to get some good stuff from a physio. I've got good contacts with certain sporting directors and directors of football. They're probably the best ones. And from there, you get the story, you check with both clubs, and as long as you trust your source, you can run it. And that's how it works. But in terms of building contacts, that just all comes over time. The more years you do this job, the more contacts you get.
That's a great chat about the physio, because I know we've obviously had a lot of former Newcastle players that came on and did interviews for us, and written ones in the Facebook group, and we started doing a lot in the long league. And all the good stories that they have, it's always about the physios and kind of what's happened behind the scene in the changing room. So I can imagine that's really a good source to have, because I can hear they get all the gossip all the time. So yeah, I can imagine that's where a lot of the good stories come from as well, because we've laughed our heads off the last few weeks at some of especially the non-league ones, some cracking stories that we've had as well. I mean, you mentioned some of the guests that you've had on as well, but for me, watching on from obviously at home and watching Sky Sports News, it's the presenters that make it as well. And you always see the banter that they have. Who's that one presenter that you can always like bounce off each other almost when you're on together?
Yeah, well, that's I have my real life fiance doesn't like me calling her this, but I do have a work wife. So I do. Right. we all do four shifts a week, but 3 of my shifts are with Bella Shah. Don't know if you can picture her. So we do Monday through to Wednesday, 7 a.m. until 10 a.m. So obviously her, and we're very good friends as well. And then obviously there's Pete Graves as well. So Pete Graves does the second half of the week on early shifts. So if there's any swaps, it's often me and Pete on together. And that's always quite good fun, because Pete for a time lived with me. He lived with me, so he'd spent half the time back in the Northeast with his family, but when he was working, he'd be down here living in my spare room. So we'd have a lot of nights out and stuff together. So we know each other very well. We're very good friends with each other. So that's very easy on air. And of course, we both have very good knowledge on football as well. We both know when we can have a laugh and a joke.
Yeah.
And if there's a story about Sunderland or Newcastle, that ends up being quite good fun on air as well. So those two especially. And in the past, he used to be on every Saturday with someone called Julian Waters. He doesn't work for us anymore, but he was like a kind of mentor to me, someone who was just so good. And I'll never, ever be as good as he was. I learned a lot from him. So those 3 would be the 3, I'd say. And Claire Tomlinson as well. So those 4.
Yeah, something like you say, it's really good. Obviously, that thing's kind of being said backstage before you came on, where you just had a little bit of joke about something, and then a story comes up, and one of you mentioned it, just watching your faces, because you're trying to hold in as much as you can, but it's so funny watching you. It's just kind of like breaking away from that, like a transfer story or some breaking news. It's really good at times. Like as obviously a fan watching on as well, really good. And speaking of banter, got to mention this line as well. I will get the hashtag transfer talk tattoo if Defoe signs back. How did that all feel when obviously it was great signing Defoe back? It didn't quite work out, and obviously the tattoo. That was really good. How you took it on the next day, asking where could you go and get the tattoo done. I mean, how was your feelings at that point when he did sign?
Well, the thing is, like, I had heard from an excellent source that he was going to sign, right? I still didn't believe them. I was like, nah. I actually thought he was going to go to a Premier League club, not a League One club. And I just thought, I'm just gonna say it, thought on air, I'm just gonna say it. If Wayne Defoe comes back to Sunderland, I will get hashtag transfer talk tattooed on my body, because there's no way it's going to happen. And then, of course, it happened Actually, it was announced. I mean, he was a free agent, but it was announced after the deadline. It was like early hours of the morning. So I actually thought I'd got away with it, but at the same time, I wanted to sign him. And so that night, the next morning, me and my fiance were having a couple of nights in Edinburgh. Little kind of holiday. It was a thank you from her to me for proposing to her. All right.
Right.
So if any man proposes to their wife to be, you are owed 2 nights in Edinburgh as a thank you from your.
I'll have to remind Laura about that one. She forgot about that one, I think.
Well, you're owed it. You're owed it. And anyway, I said to her, "Oh my God!" And I've got no tattoos, right? And I said, I'm gonna have to see this through, aren't I? And I said, like, work phoned me and said, if you're gonna do it, like, we'll get a camera there and stuff.
Oh, but yeah.
And they were like, yeah, just get a fake one. I said, you know what? I think I'm gonna do it. And I said to her, I'm just gonna go through with it. What, I've said I'm gonna go through with it. And she went mental. She was like, no, you are not. If you do that, I will break up with you if you do that. So in the end, right, I said, I've got quite a decision to make here. And I decided I was still going to go through with it.
Yeah.
Right? I said to work, right, I'm going to go through with it. I'm going to be in Edinburgh. There are various tattoo artists in Edinburgh. You tell me what time a camera operator can get to me, and I'll choose a tattoo parlor and I'll go there. And because that night there was the Edinburgh Derby and the Old Firm,
right,
there was a single camera operator available in Scotland to come because they were all working on those derbies. And I said, well, if you're not going to get a proper camera there and do it properly, then in that case, I'm going to get the henna tattoo instead. So eventually I got a henna tattoo, and just my fiance filmed it on her phone and stuff like that. And we had a bit of a joke about it, but I was actually going to go through with that. I was going to do it. But in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't, because he played about 6 games and didn't score and then retired.
Oh, yeah, didn't do much. I mean, what was, obviously, like you say, it didn't get kind of brought until early hours. Was your phone just non-stop Twitter and Facebook at that time? Was it just kind of, it's happened?
Yeah. Well, I'd been in work since 4 a.m. So I'd been up since 2:20 a.m. So by the time he signed, it was almost 24 hours and I'd gone to sleep.
Right.
You try to stay up as long as you can, just in case somebody phones you with a story.
Yeah.
I'd passed out asleep, knowing that we had a flight to Edinburgh the next morning as well. And it was when I woke up, it was just bang, 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 bang with the phone. It was all good fun, those kind of things are just fun, aren't they?
It does, yeah. The fans love it.
In this job, in any job, you can't always just take yourself too seriously. You've got to have a bit of fun with it, and I think the viewers enjoyed it as well. And I know that that Jermaine Defoe enjoyed it as well. So it was all a good laugh. I just I wish he'd been able to score the winner in the playoff final rather than retiring a bit early.
Would have been magic, wouldn't it? Definitely. I was just saying to Stephen as well earlier, I think it'd be nice if we did a bit breaking kind of news, kind of. I know you were speaking of the Drew McIntyre kind of during the week. If Sunderland win promotion, I think you should go 1-1 at SummerSlam. How about
that? If we win promotion this season, well, yes, definitely, because it's absolutely not a hope in hell. So yes, I'll agree to that one.
Yeah, he was a big lad, wasn't he?
Yes.
But no, Tom, honestly, thank you so much for coming on. I know you've been so busy today. We've seen you a few times on the telly as well. Really appreciate you taking your time out and coming on and just helping the little channels out as well. I know we're really starting to take off a little bit now with Newcastle content, but also our non-league, which we've been talking about before the show. And even just yourself, you just mentioned you love the North East game as well. Do you want to mention it quickly about the club that you supported?
Yeah, well, obviously, it's Alnwick Town, which is, I'm from Alnwick, so the problem was as a kid being a Sunderland fan, Alnwick Town playing black and white stripes. So that's the one drawback. Yeah, they're my local club in the northeast, but obviously I'm following South Shields because Super Kevin Phillips, the manager there now as well. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for the Heat as well, for Gateshead.
Mm-hmm.
And And Marcus Madison's re-signed for them, hasn't he? Marcus Madison.
Darlington, he's him and Wheater as well. It's a crazy team to have in that league. Unbelievable.
Yeah, sorry, it is Darlington who he's signed for. And down here, I live in Berkshire now, so near Reading. So Bracknell Town and Binfield, I follow them as well. So I really love a day out at non-league football. And it's something. It's a real kind of family atmosphere as well at non-league football. So I'm a big fan. I like following the local clubs, as well as, of course, Sunderland as well.
Definitely. You mentioned like love there. We had Barry Hales on, was one of our kind of first interviews that we did about the non-league, and he's literally just signed again. 40-year-olds just signed for another season. He just says he can't give it up. I've
watched him quite a few times because Bracknell and Windsor. There was one season. I mean, Bracknell ended up getting promoted the following season. But there was one season. I'm sure they played each other about 4 times. Now went to 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And Hales started on the left of a back 3, right? For Windsor, which was baffling. And at half time, he just put himself up front and scored an absolute scorching volley. Absolute scorching volley. And he's still at it. And that was about 3 seasons ago, and he's still going. But Windsor, it is the worst kit in the history of kits. It's a Union Jack, but it's green and white.
Right.
Green, red, and white. It is awful. Look it up on the internet. Windsor's kit is the worst one, but Hales still a quality player.
Oh, it was really good talking to him as well. And anyone that's watching again, thank you so much as well. I know we've got another interview later. We've got this current Heaven Town manager, Daniel Bobby Moore, who I think has just done the Great North Run. So it's unbelievable that he's actually going to be coming on later as well. Hats off to him for that as well. But brilliant. But yeah, just before we go, Tom, I just want to say hi, because he's just been watching on the telly, like I said before the show, and he didn't believe that you were coming on straight away from Sky Sports. You want to say hiya?
Hi.
How are you? I hear you've played next goal winner in the Garden and you won.
You win, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, well done. That's what I like to see. Keep wearing that red and white stripe, team. I know you played for a team that play in red and white stripes, so you keep playing for them, all right? Don't you turn black and white.
You keep scoring the goals there. Yeah. But no, Tom, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time coming on after a busy show. But yeah, thank you so much, Tom.
My pleasure.